All right, looks like we are recording. What is going on, people? It is your boy Mac again, and we're getting back to the topics. I have again with me my amazing friend Mila. How you doing, Mila?
Okay. I'm doing great. I don't know, it's nice outside.
Oh, is it nice outside?
Yeah. I mean, it's cold. It's cold as hell, but it's nice. Yeah.
Nice in terms of sunny, or
Yeah, sunny. There's no wind.
oh well, yeah, that is nice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's not looking too hot down here. It's usually great, but yeah, it's like 60, 55 right now, which I don't
Oh,
like that.
I love it. That's the weather I like.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
like that. So a lot of things going on in the world, huh?
Yeah.
A lot of things going on in the world. So today we're gonna talk about what's going on in Myanmar because they just had a coup, a pretty serious situation going on in terms of their military. So kind of want you to kind of just give a brief overview of the situation, and then we could just kind of talk.
Yeah. So basically, just a backstory. Their president, Miss Suu Kyi, she was an opposition leader to the original like military dictatorship back in like the 80s and 90s, and she was actually originally under house arrest for like 15 years, received the Nobel Peace Prize like while under house arrest, and eventually became like elected leader of Myanmar. Um, and in their recent November election, and I'm gonna try to say this right. So in their recent November election, there's been a lot of widespread claims of fraud, even though an independent like election committee has said that there has not been any claims of fraud. However, the military, who when they did redraft their constitution for democracy, did strategically um, draft in the constitution that they have veto power all the time, like enough of a majority for veto power.
Are you saying the
Um,
military has veto power?
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
like the military like opposition,
right.
uh, and they are claiming that the election is a fraud because she won by a landslide. And after 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 weeks and months of misinformation spreading through the internet and just channels anywhere, the military carried out a coup whenever their Congress was set in an open setting, like to start the new session.
Right.
So I say all that very specifically like that because there's a lot of ties to also what happened in the US, and like because I'm a US citizen, that's kind of what I'm thinking of, like that's my perspective.
Right.
uh, but basically, yeah, the military performed a coup. Miss Suu Kyi is being supposedly held in house arrest again, and they basically established this state for the next year.
Right. So essentially, comparing it to America and what happened on January 6th, essentially, what is happening in Myanmar is basically if the military assisted those insurrectionists at the capital. That's
Yeah,
essentially what's going on in
yeah,
Myanmar.
like in large, essentially.
If the
Yeah.
military would have assisted those insurrectionists, then that's exactly what is going on in Myanmar, basically.
Yes, and if they were successful. So the military coup in Myanmar is uh it's being actively protested. I just saw like teachers are now like coming out and very openly like protesting against the opposition, and
And they're blacking out or flash blackouts for like streets and businesses and stuff like that, or what do you call it, like flash, not flash floods, but basically like mob rushes into the streets, basically like disrupting
yeah,
the
I'm losing the term simply because like there's like this little recording light thing that happens sometimes. You know how you see that and you lose the term? But yeah, essentially that's what's happening. There's a lot of resistance as well. Um, it's just
yeah, so basically um obviously it's not good, and Myanmar is getting backlash from all sides, like, China, Russia, and the United States. This is kind of a rare instance of solidarity on kind of, both sides of the political spectrum and kind of condemning this type of behavior. And regardless of how Myanmar is, because they have a history of doing not so great things. What happened in Rohingya or with the Rohingya Muslims a few years ago.
And actually that's like the military leader, like he's the one who like he's so like controversial because he
Right.
ordered those, like he's ordered those supposed attacks. But then you have Miss Suki, who's also controversial because she backed it.
She didn't
Like,
necessarily back it. She
well, she
just
backed it to
didn't
the
speak up
international.
against it. She didn't speak up against it, but the thing is, you just mentioned how the military has vetoes. They actually have power in that country that's separate than this country. The president in the United States is the commander in chief of the military. So what you make it sound like is that Myanmar's military is like separate from their members of parliament, basically their prime minister, which is Miss Suki, essentially. So
Yeah,
they act independently of one another instead of Miss Suki being the commander in chief of the military.
he's not though.
Exactly, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, that's,
So
oh yeah, okay,
whenever I'm
okay.
whenever I'm making the point about her being kind of complacent with the Rohingya Muslims, like I putting it in context, she's being arrested now. It kind of seems like she really wouldn't have had much of a say in it in the first place. And historically, this is not the first time um, Myanmar has been under a coup,
A military
overthrow.
regime.
Yeah, a military regime. Basically, they were in it basically from 1960 all the way up to 2011. So 50-year span where they were under military rule, and it started whenever their prime minister back then basically came in and said, "Hey, we need a caretaker government," and the military. He basically appointed the military to do it, and then 2 years later, they just they overthrew the country, and similar to what's going on now. But that one back then was, I believe, a result of the UK pulling out of Myanmar and allowing it to be its own independent country, and then
Yeah, without any support and having like
exactly.
broken down all of the support that it did once have. Yeah.
Exactly. So, like you said with Miss Suki, she's been an opponent of the military for decades, and in 2011, I believe, she actually did become the leader in a democratically
Yeah,
ran
there's the
election.
ran elections in Myanmar in like 25 years.
Right. So it's been like that it's been democratic for about a decade, we can say. So now it's being overthrown, and it just kind of sucks because I feel like the United States is a military, not necessarily military, they're a world leader because we were talking about this off camera just a second ago, but Joe Biden, he just took out military aid from Saudi Arabia, and he was calling on other countries like the UK and France and Canada to an extent to do the exact same thing because they all provide funding for Saudi Arabia to attack civilians and all those things. So in terms of the United States and their influence on the world, I think this coup is a result of what the world saw on January 6th, in the United States, basically. That's a similar thing that what happened in China whenever they were being condemned by the Uyghurs. And they basically pointed the finger right back at the United States and said, look what you're doing to Black people in America. So I think America is not necessarily like involved in Myanmar clearly, but I think we are an example of the world, because we do prop ourselves up and call ourselves the best and the brightest and all that. So other countries do take our lead.
Well, and definitely like whenever you have like a country that's often thought of as a little bit more stable like the US, have something like that happen, I think that that does kind of like set an example or definitely embolden people. But Oh no.
What?
Oh, I thought you were frozen.
I'm no, I'm just listening. I'm just listening. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. No, but I think that it would embolden people. Now, I don't know necessarily what people think of the United States like now. I know that internationally, like a lot of like the like I don't want to say prestige. Unfortunately, if you can't see this, like quotation marks, prestige of like the US has definitely like gone down in recent years.
Hmm.
Um, but I still think like seeing something like that happen in a country that very much prides itself on democracy, I think it would embolden other people for sure. Um, even if the other country or even if the other place does have like a history of it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And you talk about how there's been a lot of protests recently in the wake of this coup. And I was reading about it. A lot of people were apprehensive because of the history of the military influence in that country. But, good on them for actually, actually speaking up and being voices in that country and, actually, sticking up for themselves.
Yeah, and like, historically like that happened too. We just don't hear a whole lot about it. But I mean, yeah, that's you got to. I
Yeah.
mean, if that's, you have to.
Yeah, and the military go
Especially since
through.
the world is so connected now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
little bit more difficult for the military to just strong arm people in different countries just because of the connectivity. Like we were saying, Facebook, the military basically banned Facebook in Myanmar. It's so wild to me that military has that type of power because I'm living in the United States and just the way that we're ran is just completely different than what's going on in Myanmar. So the military, they banned Facebook because Facebook is like the internet for them. Like Facebook alone, they get a lot of their information from that site.
yeah. I can't remember what country, or it might be something like slang for the internet is Facebook.
Slang for the internet?
Yeah, like, oh, I needed to get on the Facebook and pay this, that, and the other.
Oh,
I've heard like Facebook used interchangeably for internet,
oh,
like
okay.
in different places that I've been. And it's kind of interesting to hear that, especially
Yeah.
in places that like the internet kind of really became more accessible to everyone once Facebook happened. It kind of became synonymous.
Right. Yeah.
They're,
So
they know the difference. It's just, it's cool to hear it interchanged.
I guess it is a little weird to hear that interchange because like Facebook is definitely not the internet, but Facebook is this is such a large like not circle but network. It's such a large network that like you could only use Facebook and be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you
Well,
could.
yeah, because and like, oh man, almost every company, like if they don't have a website, they have a Facebook.
Yeah, yeah,
Can't tell you how many times I've been like, okay, well, I can only view their business hours, then I'll guess I will. Oh,
right. So, in terms of um Myanmar and what's going on in the aftermath, would you call it a humanitarian effort at the moment? Is like, do you know the situation like in terms of like the violence in the country? Like,
oh, like crimes against humanity?
yeah, like the military hasn't actually like done anything except detain like political leaders, right? They haven't
Yeah.
actually like gone and like enacted violence, which they're completely
That we're
capable of
hearing
doing.
about.
What was that?
That we're hearing about.
Right. They're completely capable of doing it though as well, because I mean, if you have the power to ban Facebook in the entire country, if you have that type of constitutional power, the military itself, that's so wild. And the and the military commander in chief, appointed himself the leader of Myanmar. So, like you said, bringing it kind of to an American perspective, that could be us, but we were playing. That could have been us, but we was just playing. They
Yeah.
you hear about you watch CNN, MSNBC, they talk about those those insurrectionists in Washington D.C. They had like insiders, and that the plan actually was a little bit more developed than it looked playing out. But um yeah, it
Well,
just
and like you brought up a good point, it wasn't military backed.
yeah, it wasn't military back. Yeah, definitely not.
There were people who had been in the military or been in the like armed forces,
Yeah, there are definitely
that were
dissenters.
involved, but they were not acting with them.
Right.
That's what's that's what's interesting. I don't know. Yeah, I can really only speak from an American perspective, but um it can all you're totally right. It can always happen here.
It
And
can. It's a threat to democracy like that. In Myanmar, it was a democratic election. That's what we are. We are a democracy, and that's literally like like flipping the mirror on yourself and like, whoa, like if you look at Myanmar, that literally could have been the United States. Um, I guess it's a good thing that this happened so close to Donald Trump being out of office, you know,
oh, from an American yeah.
because he's banned from Twitter now. Like they did all of this kind of not necessarily retro. It is retroactive because he's been acting up in his entire
Yeah,
four
no. When
years.
that happened, I was like, oh, so you're telling me if we would have had consequences sooner, it could have been interesting. You could have
Yeah,
done okay.
yeah. If he had a little bit more foresight, or I don't know, I guess he must have thought that he could have just gotten away from saying it was a fraudulent election, and people would have just more people would have ran with it, but no. But apparently in Myanmar it did stick, which is very unfortunate. They like we were talking about, they do have a history of military rule. Like it was literally under military rule until 2011. So this is unfortunately going back to kind of old ways for them. Um, I don't really have I don't really have any much more insight on it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I would encourage people to like to just follow it and like um hear about it, like make it like see what you can figure out. I mean, we're gonna be learning more as it goes on. The military's like put this whole like year thing in place, so we'll see if it goes longer, if maybe we can get it to end sooner. I don't know. Um,
Pressure definitely needs to be put on them. I believe America did say that they were imposing sanctions on them as a result of this, but I don't think that the military was phased by that comment. So,
the U.S. has really pulled out of like the international stage. Like, if China doesn't put sanctions on them and we do, like, then they're still golden. Like, they still can do business with China. And China's a big enough like player that's fine. They can do that if that's what like if that's all they can trade with and like that then that's fine.
yeah,
So that's kind
yeah,
of that's like definitely the downside with like pulling out of the international stage like we had been kind of doing, or just straight up making a fool of ourselves on the international stage for the last like 4 years. Well,
yeah,
longer, but
yeah, and this isn't necessarily unique to Myanmar because Haiti is going through something. Well, like we said, America had that January 6th situation, but Haiti is also going through a similar kind of nebulous election type of situation where their president just refuses to leave office, basically. And
opposition to democracy, really.
yeah, pretty much. I think the Haitian citizens gave him until today to leave office, but he says that his term ends this time next year.
It was about like when does the term end kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's a little weird on that. Haiti's going ham right now. Haiti's going really ham. And I'm just thinking to myself, has it always it hasn't always been like this. This is literally like threats to democracy, and America literally like went to different countries trying to uphold, quote unquote, uphold democracy, like you talk about in these Latin American countries. We talk about Honduras and El Salvador and all these countries that they tried to impose, capitalism and democracy on them.
Gonna say, because a lot of those they ended up just like installing and backing some really fucked up tough regimes like the US did. Like it ended like, oh man.
Yeah, yeah. So this just kind of makes me like wonder, is this like these situations clearly aren't isolated. It's just what makes me kind of think of what the link is. I don't know what kind of country Myanmar is. Well, it's democratic, obviously. Haiti, they had a democratic election. We had a democratic election. And I think it's just the far right is really trying to assert themselves so aggressively.
It is happening globally. Like, I think globally we're just becoming like more
Emboldened.
well, I think globally what's happening is there's becoming like a like care in people who aren't like white Christian Americans. Like I think we're starting to globally like kind of care. And then there is a large push, and I'm not gonna say that it's all white because it's really not. There's a lot of like just like there's a lot of other stuff, but like there is like now a huge push of like, nope, we need to like bring it back to the way it was. And the only way we can do that is by force. And everyone here should look up the definition of fascism real quick. Like, even if you got to pause, check it out, look up the definition of fascism, and then like rejoin this with like that cap on, because like that's kind of what it is. And like I remember whenever I was traveling through Poland in 2014, and um there was like talk of like a renewed Nazi party, and like
Anti-Semitism.
a renewed like far right party in Poland, and most of like Eastern Europe that was very, very much, oh, and all of Europe because Jesus.
Right.
But like, but most of Europe that was like very, very much opposing immigration, but it manifested as racism because it was like Turkish immigrants and North African immigrants. And when I was traveling through Poland, like I put my things in a hostel in Warsaw and I left to go like grab some groceries because I was going to be there for about a week. And I came back and they had written white power with a swastika on like the side of the building I was staying in. And what's scary about that is they don't like Poland English isn't the main language. So they would have had to see me or someone who didn't fit the Polish description and arguably great marketing reach out in the language that I speak, or at least that I would understand, because like English is like a lingua franca. It is a language that is like spoken around the world. Um, and paint that on the side of the like building I was staying in.
Right.
It's terrifying. And like that was not an isolated incident in Poland. Like that was not an isolated incident in Poland. And when I was in France back in 2009, I had similar things happen because I was, not white.
Okay. Yeah. 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 I definitely agree with you that a lot of these a lot of these flashpoints around the world, including in this country, have been kind of instigated by the right. And um yeah, it's really disheartening to see kind of a way to get through to the opposition and the people that they're influencing, kind of by just by doing what they're doing. Like people like that type of stuff, and people like power. People, like you said, they like things to kind of stay the way they are. People don't like change. It's just wild to kind of really see things in the world that they've always been happening, but like in this country in particular, like now that it's like now that you have like a firsthand account that like it's touched down here, like I don't even know what to say because you just it just kind of is more illuminating whenever it's happening in your country. You know, like we never have war in the United States, and then whenever 9/11 happened, they went they went so like stringent with like security checks and like airports and all that stuff. You know, they went like overboard with all of that stuff. Um, like America's just not used to that, like that type of realness.
Your eyes to like American privilege for sure.
Yeah, yeah, because America is like just one really huge manicured country, and we like to keep our we like to keep our dirty secrets like down, down, down. We don't like to acknowledge them whatsoever, you know. So it's just, I mean, now it's 2021. You can't really keep that unresolved tension down anymore, and it's I guess it's kind of surprising that it is like in this abundance of people that are like so anti-democracy. Like anti-democracy, you know.
Well, and what you have though, and like how you get that is like a deep distrust of government, like a deep distrust of like government and like what government can do for you, and ultimately like that can radicalize anybody on
Right.
like on either side or any side whenever you have more than two outside. But like
Right.
it can radicalize anybody to like want to participate in fascism. But and like you and I were talking about that, it's like super easy for someone who's like pretty progressive to like support like a anti-government situation just because the government's not fucking working right now
Right.
anywhere, and so it's easy to just be like,
Right.
okay, well, something else because this isn't working.
Yeah, like burn it all down.
Yes, like I always have to tell like my friends, like we do have to be careful because like it is working a little bit, so like we can't burn it all down right now because then we'd have nothing. But I don't know, I see their point sometimes too. Shit's not
Yeah,
working.
no, I don't.
It's not working.
It's,
But
it's definitely not working, and something needs to be done. But dismantling democracy is not the answer. Um,
well,
like,
it's like getting rid of your healthcare plan with no other one in sight. Uh-oh, was that a callback? Didn't mean to do that. It's like removing your president without someone to replace them. Uh-oh, is that?
yeah, it's a little too close to home.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so yeah, like three similar situations going on with Myanmar actually kind of like kind of going that extra kind of mile and actually overthrowing their government. Haiti, I guess, would be a little bit different. It wouldn't be a military coup. It would be something like what have happened in America, an insurrection. Um, but yeah, America, that was a little half-hearted. Like what's going on in other parts of the world, I'm kind of like hesitant to actually call what happened in America like a coup or insurrection. Like it was attempted, but it was kind of, I mean, people did die. You don't want to discredit that, but I mean, it was, I don't know, it was vanilla compared to like stuff going on in other parts of the world, you know, and even with Russia, with the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin, like killing his political enemies, just kind of just at a whim, really. It's on a whim.
Years. He's just been. I mean, motherfucker was a part of the KGB. Like,
Yeah, there's that story recently.
but I'm saying, like, people have been telling us this since like '94. Putin doesn't seem like someone we should be trusting.
Yeah, no,
He's
exactly.
just continually like poisoning. Well, he's just, he's continually like putting his opposition like in danger and poisoning like anyone who opposes him.
Well, yeah,
That's
he's making threats. You know, he'll attempt to silence them. You know, if they don't flee, then yeah, you know, they're gonna get killed. You know, and I think that's something that Trump was trying to do. He was encouraging, you know, those type of things, and yeah, and in Haiti, uh, Haiti, I think is actually a really good example of a comparison to Russia, just because he's not he's not leaving. He doesn't want to leave. He's gonna stay there an extra year. I just think that's crazy. So uh,
yeah. I think it's unfortunate that like the Western, well, the world, but definitely like we share a hemisphere with Haiti, and I think it would behoove us to very much pay attention, like
we
to
share a
what's
continent
happening
with
in Haiti,
Haiti.
especially over the like now, but especially like over the next year, because one, they're also Americans,
Mm,
and two, like North Americans,
exactly.
just because of the way the US named their citizenship, it's a little weird. But they're
Yeah.
also Americans, and like this is happening like on our continent, like within our hemisphere, and like this is something we should also want to hold up democracy around us. You don't
Right.
want it to start falling around you. I think that's why Myanmar is so concerning. That's why Russia is so concerning, is because we can just see like giving in to the option that would get your ass killed.
Yeah. I believe why Myanmar is shed so bright a light is because it is on the other part of the world, and the United States doesn't necessarily have anything to do with that country specifically. But with Haiti, I believe we do have a little bit of history with them, and um, yeah, like what's going on in their government, and um, like anything bad. And I feel like anything bad in the American hemisphere, you know, is kind of either directly or indirectly a result of the United States. So Haiti might not actually get as much press as Myanmar, even though the situations are similar, just because we might have a little bit more blood on our hands in one situation than the other, you know? And it is that kind of thing with the United States trying to save face. It's
So,
the politics.
so one thing that I have been like really paying attention more to lately is deportations and immigration. And I don't think it helps. Like, since the Biden administration has taken over, we have deported like a lot more African descent folks, and that includes like a whole bunch of people from Haiti. So we've been deporting people back to Haiti in like this kind of environment, and ultimately, like that things don't happen in a vacuum. Like life does not happen in a vacuum, and especially like these kinds of events do not happen in a vacuum. And putting more pressure on the current economy, where like Haiti is one of like the last places in the I'm not even going to say anything. Haiti has some serious food security issues that are also perpetuated by the United States and our advantages that we take over them. But like, and then like deporting people back to Haiti right now,
Mm,
when clearly like that should be like one of the like perfect excuses for like perfect reasons, and like and like things to point to when you're talking about asylum or like
right, exactly.
refuge. And I don't think that's gonna help. That's why I'm like, it would really behoove America to pay attention to this and not
Yeah.
throw shit at the fan.
Right. If you don't want asylum seekers, then exactly it would behoove you to actually help the country so you don't have an influx of Haitians coming into your country if that's something that you don't want.
Well,
So
not just that, but like the Dominican Republic and Haiti have that whole situation. And so, like, you don't want them to flee there either, because that could start a war on Hispaniola, like the island. So it's
right.
just, guys, immigration is not just like an indigenous and mestizo or like white problem.
Right.
It's like, or white issue. Like, it's a black issue. And whenever you forget that, like, that is a thing, you are just going to contribute to like instability
Yeah.
beyond belief.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely could be doing way more in Haiti than in Myanmar. We could help both situations, but Haiti's like right there. It's like right off the coast of Florida. And a little bit of background is because I didn't describe it. Basically, the president of Haiti gets a 5-year term, but in the Constitution, it's a little bit ambiguous as to whenever the term starts for each president. So the Haitian citizens are saying, your term is up at the end of this month. He says, my term is up at the end of next year, this same time, basically. And that's what's going on in Haiti. I think I did read that they are going to revise their constitution, but what's going on currently with the current president, like it seems like he's going to stay in there, and it's kind of worrying to see what's going to happen next week because they were telling him, hey, you got to be out by what's essentially today, Friday, which is February the 5th. You got to be out, and he says, I'm not leaving. So I'm sure we're gonna have to give a little update about the Haitian situation next week because, you know, it could just blow over, and go into next year. Well, he'll have to get out next year, or they could be like, no, like you're getting out now, like right now. Yeah.
I think that's a great idea to go ahead and like check in on this pretty pretty
Yeah.
often, just because yeah, they're a neighbor. Shit.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking on updates, you can give a quick update about India because we did talk about India,
We did. We talked about India and the strike that the farmers were
the
doing.
general spread. Yeah,
Yeah, protests have turned violent, not by the protesters. Because I feel like I should clarify.
surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise, there has been a lot of crackdown on protesters. We're talking internet blocking or blockages. And like people are having a hard time getting the message out of what is happening in India right now to these like protesters, which when we were talking about this, we were talking about how peaceful they were doing it between this time and this time. It was just such a large overwhelming thing, and they're having internet blockages. I mean, protesters are being beat up, their faces are being kicked in, and it's just
Basically, yeah.
it's never like settling to see someone's face just like bloodied from a footprint, but it's definitely it's still shocking anytime you see it, especially in response to a living wage.
Right. Yeah, and you were talking about how the military is silencing their citizens by banning Facebook, just like in Myanmar. VPNs are important.
Circle, not a heart. That's why not a heart.
Circle.
Full circle.
Yeah, yeah, full circle. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, what's going on in India is crazy because, speaking back from the Americans' perspective, citizens have a right to protest. Like it is our right to protest, and protesting is a form of speech. That's how the masses can let their government know that they are like unhappy about something specific. People go to the streets to protest, to show their discontent, and then the military, or not the military, the government, then it's upon them to react to those calls of discontent. That is not happening anywhere. It's not happening anywhere. Peaceful protest turns into a violent reaction from the other side, and that's just it's really um it really sucks because it's kind of making apparent like what the end goal is going to eventually be. If you really think about it, has there ever been peaceful revolution? Has there ever been progressive change without violence? We had civil rights in the 60s in America. We know how that ended. And they had American revolutions, French revolutions. So um, these things historically don't end peacefully, or nothing changes peacefully. So it's kind of the writing on the wall. Um, you hear people in America talking about civil war all the time, and I don't think people are ready for civil war. Killer Mike said, "If you don't know how to fish, you're not ready for civil war," and I agree with that because what we were talking about, if you're going to be one side, if you're going to be opposition side of a civil war, the defecting side, you're not going to have any resources afforded to you.
Well, depending on who's the defecting side. I mean, if you think about it, if it's like rural America, I mean, rural America feeds us. So if you think about it, and like, you know, it,
Well, they're working class individuals. If you talk from a classist perspective, I mean, ideologically, a lot of people are kind of,
I still just don't think people understand, like, because
the full
again, with
implications.
that American privilege, like if you have grown up here and lived here, you didn't experience war. Like if you've immigrated here, yeah. If you've gone and like fought somewhere else, yeah. But like if you grew up here and you lived here, you've never experienced it. And like I don't think you know what you're signing up for.
Right.
Like because like life doesn't stop in a war. You don't get to like stop what you're doing to like
Right.
you still have to like pay your electric bill, maybe, if that's still a thing. You still have to like find food to eat. You still have to like make sure your kids are educated in some way. Like you take the bus, but the bus doesn't have windows because, last month they were blown out.
Mm.
Like, I don't think people understand. And quite frankly, like, I don't even understand fully because I've never been in a war zone. And I'm very thankful for that.
I really don't understand either. Like, is it a race war? Is it a left versus right war? Is it a class war? Like, what kind of civil war is it going to be? Like, what kind of where the line's going to be drawn? I don't really understand what people want.
That's what I think. I honestly don't know, but I feel like it'll happen. Like what will happen is there will be a major event where it'll split the country like even more to where one part does like do something violent and it becomes a terror. And at that point, that is when we know what the sides of the Civil War are about. We don't know that. I think like unfortunately, yeah, it's so
I hope
and
not.
like the majority of us would probably just be like hearing about it for the first like month or so because it didn't reach our doorstep, but it was very actively happening in our extremely large country.
Right. Yeah. Like we
That's what was so
saw
scary about like the like protests over the summer was I was like, this feels like soon
lines
like
being drawn, like Seattle,
lines are being drawn.
and then
Yeah,
Kenosha, and you know,
Portland.
yeah.
And Portland's its own little microcosm because it's in like a very like Portland is in a very like opposite state.
Right. Yeah.
Like
It's
Portland
kind
straight up was like opposite day right here
of
all the time.
yeah. It's like Austin, essentially.
But more divided between like its rural and its, I think.
Right. Oh yeah, I can see that definitely. Yeah. So yeah, what regular people can do is honestly just raise awareness. Donations can be had, obviously. India, that is an inspiration. That is things that we should be doing in the States because they had a general strike of over 300 million people, and this country consists of 300 million people. So they basically had a protest the size of the United States population, which is very inspiring. Currently, right now, they're definitely being silenced, which definitely sucks, and I hate to see what the direction of that is going to go. But yeah, keep India, uh, keep India, kind of in your thoughts whenever you. What's that? What? Oh crap! What the heck was that? Oh, did you hear that?
I don't know what it was though.
I think they're cutting grass out there, so I guess it's time. All right, well, thank you all for listening to the pod. We'll try to keep these more regular because I do enjoy talking to Mila. She's so awesome and insightful. And
Yeah. Well, we always have some great conversations. I always like learning stuff because there are some things that I just am not attuned to.
oh yeah, definitely. Like both of us, like we teach each other. So yeah, we'll get back at it next week. Fingers crossed. All right, guys. We'll see y'all later. Thank y'all for listening.